All right, guys, we are back with the Beatryce prophecy, and we are on chapter 22. Jack Dory sat under the eaves of Granny Bipspeak's hut, and he tipped his stool back and leaned against the warm wall and put his face to the sun. He closed his eyes. He imagined Beatryce in the dark room. He imagined her riding a girl who could ride. It was unbelievable strange, and also very dangerous, which was surely why the monks did not want Beatryce brought back to them. It is dangerous, Jack Dory, he told himself. Mark that this is dangerous. Trouble has a very long tail. This girl must be kept close. She must be protected. And so he put her in the center of his mind. Beatryce, he willed her safe. Jack Dory knew that he could not keep people safe. Nevertheless, he worked at keeping Beatryce, Beatryce who could write, Beatryce and her goat, Beatryce and her laughter, safe in his mind. He heard horses' hoofs. He kept his eyes closed and his back against the sun-warmed wall, but his heart felt beat faster. Horses were rare things. Horses belonged only to the king and to the king's men, and it could mean nothing good to have a soldier of the king appear in the village where there was a girl in the village who could ride. Trouble was a very long tale. The horses' hoofs came closer. Closer. Jack Dory's heart beat faster, and then there came the sound of someone dismounting, the clank of a sword. Jack Dory thought, well, let it begin then. He brought the stool forward. He put his feet on the ground. He opened his eyes. A soldier of the king was standing before him. Boy, said the soldier, are there strangers abiding in your village? Strangers? Said Jack Dory. People unknown to you? Ah, people unknown to me. Not a one. Nothing is different here, said the soldier, and he had small eyes. He kept his hand on the hilt of his sword. Everything is just as it ever was, said Jack Dory. Not one thing has changed, and it is the curse of this little place to stay the same as it always has been. He smiled. I will ask again in the clearest terms possible, has there been a girl child who came to this village alone and looking for shelter? Jack Dory's heart fell. Beatryce. He looked into the eyes of the soldier. There was no light in those small eyes, no mercy at all. There has not been any sort of girl who has come here, Jack Dory said without looking away. He willed his heart to beat slowly. Slowly. Understand, we will ask the question of everyone, said the king's man. We will knock on every door of every hovel in this village, and we will question every soul. To lie would mean death. We are here on a mission for His Majesty himself. It is the king who looks for this girl. Do you understand? I understand, said Jack Dory. It is the king himself. He smiled. This is no laughing matter, boy. The girl is bewitched. She is a danger to herself and to all who encounter her. But I am not laughing, said Jack Dory. Am I? But I know no dangerous girl. What about a soldier? Have you seen a soldier? A soldier? Said Jack Dory. He kept a smile on his face. Is that a trick question? I'm seeing a soldier now, am I not? I will search your hut, said the soldier. Search all you want, said Jack Dory. He waved his hand in the direction of the door, and then he tipped his stool back again, put his face to the sun, and closed his eyes. He heard the soldier cross the threshold of Granny Bipspeak's hut, and then he came back out again. He heard the buzz of a bee, and then finally the sound of hooves and the jingling of the king's soldier's spurs as he led the horse away. Jack Dory kept his eyes closed. He waited, and then he waited some more, and the bee hovered companionably near his head. And he had often thought that if Granny Bipspeak bothered to return from the next world, for surely there was a next world, a different world, a world that made more sense than this one, it would be the form of a bee. And because of this, Jack Dory spoke to all the bees, every bee. All is well, Granny Bipspeak, he whispered. Do not worry. I will do nothing foolish, I promise you. He opened his eyes, and the bee was directly in front of him, humming. But never again will I sit idly by, said Jack Dory, nor will I ever again run away. I will not, I promise you. Chapter 23. Slowly Jack Dory lowered the stool legs to the ground. He stood, he stretched, and he said, We will go and get her now, Granny Bipspeak. He made his way to the inn. Now what? Said the innkeeper's wife. It is never silent here, always someone demanding something. Aye, said Jack Dory. Then you two talked to the soldier of the king, looking for a strange child, he was. Did he go upstairs? I told him there was nothing up here but a monk and a dying man, but he had to go for himself. He came back downstairs quick enough, and he said, Mother, it smells of death upstairs, and there is a goat. You did not tell me of a goat. The goat is in a very bad mood. He laughed. I did not laugh with him. There's nothing funny to me about a goat in a bad mood. I think I will go and pay that goat a visit, said Jack Dory. Do you please? Everyone else does. She shook her head. A bewitched girl child. That is who he is searching for. The king wants her. If you can believe such a thing, Jack Dory could believe such a thing, and so he climbed the stairs slowly, afraid of what he might find. In the dark room, the man was weeping as if he would never stop, and the blankets were over his head. Beatrice was on the floor. She was bent over a piece of parchment, writing and writing. The goat was beside her and looked at Beatrice, and then at Jack Dory, and then she looked at Beatrice again, as if to say, "You see how it is here?" "I do see," Jack Dory said to the goat. "Beatrice," he said, and then he remembered that he should not have said her name. But she did not look up, and the man did not stop crying, and it was as if Jack Dory had not spoken at all. "Beatrice," he said again in a whisper. He bent down and took Beatrice by the shoulders and shook her. The goat stuck her head in between them to intercede or to assist Jack Dory, could not tell which one. Uh, she was a very troublesome goat. Jack Dory was beginning to form a fondness for her. "We must go," Jack Dory said to Beatrice. He pulled her to her feet. In doing so, he knocked over the pot of ink. Black ink, dark as blood, spread across the floor. Beatrice looked at the ink and then at Jack Dory. She looked past him, and she said, "Under the bed there is a sword." "A sword?" said Jack Dory. "Under the bed there is a sword," said Beatrice. It was as if someone had put a spell on her, and under the bed there is a sword were the only words that she was capable of speaking. "Very well," said Jack Dory. "I will look under the bed for a sword." He bent down and reached under the bed and felt something heavy and cold, and pulled the thing out and held it up. A sword, the blade of it long and terrible and gleaming mutely. The dark bearded face of a robber flashed through Jack Dory's mind, the robber and the knife he held between his teeth. Jack Dory thought that a sword such as this would be a very useful thing to have. And Swellica butted him in the leg. He looked back at her. "Yes," he said. He lowered the sword. "You are right. We must go now." The soldier suddenly threw the covers from his head. He shouted, "She returns! Do you see her? She returns!" "Beatrice," said Jack Dory, "we must go." He pushed her before him out of the room and down the stairs, and the goat followed, her hoofs clattering on the wooden steps. Ahead of them a bee hovered in the gloom. "Yes, Granny," whispered Jack Dory, "I have her here. I will keep her safe." And the goat made a noise that seemed to say, "Hurry, hurry faster." And from the room behind them there was a flash of light, a terrible stench, and the sound of great wings beating together. The sword was heavy, menacing, glorious in Jack Dory's hands. In the castle, the youngest son of the youngest son, the man who is now king, was being entertained and distracted. He sat upon his throne and clapped in time with the song of the court musicians. He laughed at the court gesture, he marveled over the juggling, and the counselor to the king. He stood in his dark robes, alone in the castle keep. He looked out upon the land from the keep. The counselor could see a long way, a very long way indeed. He could see all the way to Castle Abelard, perched on the cliff and overlooking the sea. "Here is the question," said the counselor. "Is it better to be the king or to be the man behind the king? That is it better to be the puppet or the puppet master? Answer me that question, Beatrice. You who always had an answer for every question. Beatrice of Abelard. Can you answer that question for me?" The counselor smiled his small twisted smile. "No need to hurry. I can wait for your answer. I am a patient man. In the meantime, as I wait, perhaps I will go and ask your mother a few questions too." And that's the end of book the second. Now we are going to go on to book the third. And we're on chapter 24. They went to the dark woods. The dark woods were not safe, but right now surely they would be safer than the village, or so said Jack Dory. Beatrice did not know or care about the dark woods. She did not know or care about what was safe or not safe. She found herself unwilling to care about anything. Her body was heavy, her limbs were weak. It felt as if she had been asleep for 1,000 years. There was a story about a man who had been made to sleep for 1,000 years. He woke to see that the stars had reconfigured themselves in the sky, and that the sun rose in the west instead of the east. And the man called out, "What world is this that I now inhabit, and how shall I live in it?" Someone had told Beatrice that story. Who? She could not remember. She could not remember nothing. Nothing. They went deeper into the dark woods, and it was as if they were entering a great green cave. "What world is this that I now inhabit, and how shall I live in it?" And when they were entirely surrounded by trees, Jack Dory turned to her and put down the sword. He placed his hands on her shoulders. "Beatrice," he said, "Beatrice." He shook her gently. "Wake up now," he said. "You must." He took her hand and placed it on Answelica's head. "Beatryce," he said, "I need you." And with those words, and with the goat's warm, solid head beneath her hand, the world seemed closer. Beatrice felt something turn over in her and start to hum. She looked into Jack Dory's eyes, and he smiled at her. "There you are. Listen to me. They are after us. I think that we should climb this tree. It is tall enough to see who is coming, and it will keep us hidden." "But what of Answelica? What of her? She cannot climb a tree." Jack Dory looked down at the goat and smiled. "Most likely not, but then I would put nothing past her. We will have the goat stay at the base of the tree and guard us. How is that?" He looked up at the tree. "Should I lift you?" he asked Beatrice. "You should not," she said. She walked past him and took hold of a low branch and swung herself up into the tree. "Ha," said Jack Dory. "Someone has taught you to read and write, and someone has taught you, too, how to climb a tree." He smiled at her. "Here," he said, "I will have you hold the sword while I climb." "No," she said. She felt a terrible shudder go through her, a great gust of darkness. "I do not want it. Take it so that I might have my hands free to climb." "No," she said again. Jack Dory sighed, and he planted the sword in the earth and swung himself up into the tree, and then leaned down and pulled the sword up. They sat together on the same branch, and Answelica looked up at them, shifting from hoof to hoof. It was as if she was considering how best to go about climbing the tree. "Stay here," said Beatrice to the goat. "You must guard us." "Hold the sword, and I will go higher," said Jack Dory. "I will not hold that sword," said Beatrice. "Do not ask me again." "Very well, then," Jack Dory said. "We will just stay here, exactly where we are, in the dark woods and the low branches of the trees, guarded by a goat. Surely this will come out right. What could possibly go wrong?" He whistled a few notes. "I heard you whistle to me," said Beatrice, before. "Aye," said Jack Dory, "I did." "I want to hear that song again," said Beatrice. "I do not know that I should be whistling at all," said Jack Dory. "They are after us." "Who?" said Beatrice. "Soldiers of the king," said Jack Dory. "That is why it is good to have the sword. The man said that he killed too many people to count with that sword." "What else did he confess?" asked Jack Dory. "I don't remember. I don't want to remember." She felt the dark breath of her abyss on her neck, and she shuddered. "Where is Brother Edic? I want to see Brother Edic. I want to go back to the monastery." "You cannot go back. There is no going back." Terrible words. "They're looking for you," said Jack Dory. "The monastery is surely one of the places that they will search, and it is the king himself who wants you. I don't know why. I expect that it is because you can form letters. They say that you are bewitched. What world is this that I now inhabit, and how shall I live in it?" The wind blew through the leaves of the trees, and Beatrice felt it blow through her too, as if it were some hollow thing. "They are only letters," she said. "It is not witchery. They are letters and words." And she looked down at her hands, and there were dark places on the thumb and the forefinger of her right hand. Ink stains. "That is where the words come from," she thought. "Those dark places." "What else did the man confess to?" asked Jack Dory. "I said I did not remember." "Why must you know everything that there is to know? You annoy me." "Aye, well, you annoy me in return," said Jack Dory. "After all, it is only because of that I am hiding up in the tree in the dark woods." Below them, Answelica bleated once, and then again. There came the sound of footsteps. Someone was making their way through the undergrowth. "Shh," said Jack Dory. "Do not tell me to shh," whispered Beatrice. "I know very well when I should be quiet. I am not some dullard." "Shh," Jack Dory said again. Beatrice rolled her eyes at him and leaned forward, and she could see nothing. A voice said, "Ah, look at this, a goat, a sweet goat." And then the voice turned the words into a song. "A sweet goat all alone, awaiting me in the green woods. Hello, my all alone. Hello, my sweet goat gone all alone. Will you come with me, my sweet goat, awaiting in the green woods? Will you come a gallivanting with me?" It was a very sweet song, with a very pretty voice singing it. And when the song ended, there was a small silence, and then came a familiar noise, the sound of Answelica's head meeting a human body with great force. Both Beatrice and Jack Dory leaned forward. Someone was flying through the air, someone in robes with long gray hair. Beatrice could not tell if it was a man or a woman. The robes were gray, and the hair was gray, and although the creature resembled a spirit more than a human being. But here was the wonderful thing. Whoever they were, man, woman, or ghost, they were laughing. And that was chapter 24.